Okay, this video is for lesson 1 of chapter 8. And we're going to get an introduction to relations and functions. Now, a relation, there's going to be a lot of vocabulary, so I'm going to type out some words here. A relation is basically a comparison between two sets of numbers. So it can be something as logical as comparing the age of a person to their height, or it can be as illogical as comparing the number of freckles a person has to the number of toes they have. Sometimes your relation makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But as long as you're comparing two numbers that are related in some way, for instance, the hairs and toes, you're talking about the same person. So as long as there's a connection between these, that would be what a relation is. Now, of course, in a math book, you might see sets of numbers that the relation is not explained, but you see that two numbers are being compared. And these are usually expressed in points, coordinates. Now, just because two numbers are between parentheses doesn't mean that they're coordinates, but as far as what we're going to deal with, that is something you can assume. Okay. Now, when you see these, and you've done it before, the first number is our x, and the second number is our y, kind of like this. And those first numbers, those x numbers, are called our domain. Those are the numbers that are also known as our input. Okay, those are the numbers that go in, and then the y is going to be the range, and those are the output. So when you're looking at these, how one thing impacts another, that's generally how you can look at domain and range. So your age impacts your height. So in a comparison of age to height, age would be the input, the domain, and height would be the output or the range. Now in some scenarios you can switch these around. So like when I was mentioning the silly comparison of freckles to toes, you could say that freckles is the input, and the number of freckles determines how many toes you have, or how many toes you have determines the number of freckles you have. And that one would be interchangeable because it's silly, but even in some more serious ones, you can sometimes be interchangeable. Now, the special type of relation we're looking at here are functions. And functions are relations where every input has exactly one output. Okay? So you're looking at things where there's only one outcome for something. So like when you throw a ball, its position at any one particular point in time. If time is your input, then its position would be the output. If you're talking about how much money is in a bank account at a particular time, time is the input, and the amount of money you have would be the output. Time is usually a good indicator that something is going to be a function, because very rarely can you have something existing in two different ways at a particular point in time. So for example, now the other thing about functions is you can tell by looking at them whether or not they're a function or not. One is by looking at a set of points, so something like this. This is a function because I can see that all of my domain, x's, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll type that in for you because those will be some of the questions you see as well, match up to different range values, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you don't have any repeats of the domain numbers giving you different outputs. So an example of a non-function would be something like this, where we've got 2, 2, and 2 giving me 3, 5, and 6. Okay, so because 2 gives me so many different outputs, this would not be a function. Now, when you're doing these, that again I said you could visualize these and look at them to figure out if they're a function or not. Another way you'll look at them is on graphs. Okay, yes, my drawing is beautiful. So when you see a graph, you're going to have a bunch of points on the graph. So for instance, let's say I've got points. Oh my gosh, I forgot how bad this thing draws dots. Okay, let's say I've got points here, here. Forgive me guys, this is just let me just make it bigger and see how that works. All right, the point there, 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 there. Let's say I got points everywhere. Okay. This would be a function because each x value of the point is going to correspond to only one y value. However, if I do something like this, and we're going to use our imagination and pretend this point is right above this point. Okay, this would fail what's called the vertical line test. Vertical line test is basically a way to test if a graph is a function. So because a vertical line would pass through 2 points, that means that the x value is giving me 2 different y values, and that's why I've got 2 different points. So the vertical line test is basically if you can draw a vertical line and pass through 2 points in a relationship, it is not a function. So this section is mostly an introduction to a lot of the terminology you're going to be seeing, and you'll have some practice with looking at relations and determining the domain, range, and whether or not it's a function. But we're going to be seeing a lot of these words later, so please make sure that you pay attention to these words. By the time you're done with Algebra 2, you're going to hate the words domain and range, but you're going to get used to it. You need to get used to them and make sure you know what each of them work with. So that's the introduction to some of the concepts, and you'll get a chance to practice them in the future lessons.